Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the next installation of our FlingCon live chat. We are here. We've got Joe back with us. Hey, Joe, good to see you. We got John. John is back with us this week. Good to see you. And Adam. Adam has come in all the way from San Antonio. Never mind that we're all there, but he's going to be joining us, and so we are here. And we're going to introduce you a little bit to Adam before we get rolling into tonight's topic. So, for those of you who have been to the con, you probably know him as the guy who goes around with all the most popular games. If you haven't met him yet, you really should come on down to the next FlingCon event in January. Get a chance to meet Adam, shake a hand, and get to know him. You, as you can see behind him right there, you will not regret it. So. So Adam, a couple questions for you. Here's what we're kind of wanting to introduce to our audience. So the first question is, how long have you been involved with board gaming? How did you get into it as a hobby? And what is your current favorite game?
Sure.
That's what we want to know.
Great questions. Great questions for what we're here to talk about. I've been gaming pretty much my whole life. I think like a lot of folks that have been in the hobby. I started with some of the basic things, Clue and Monopoly and that sort of stuff. Played a lot of Sorry and Parcheesi and those types of games when I was little. I remember going to my grandparents' house and playing some card games, Pinochle and Euchre, and getting into spades and hearts and that kind of stuff. There was this game that always fascinated me when I was young. That they had at this children's clothing store that my mom worked at briefly for a while, that was called the Bermuda Triangle. I think it was a Milton Bradley game. But it had this really cool, it was the board was, it sort of showed the sea zone there, and you had all these little boats that had to travel along these routes. And it had this mechanic where there was this plastic piece that would sit on top of the board that had artwork on top of it that looked like a storm, and it would move around the board as the game went on, and it had little magnets under there that would, if you were unlucky, would suck up your ship and it would get lost in the Bermuda Triangle. And so that was kind of my first introduction to things that were, maybe a little bit more mechanically interesting. I played in high school. My friends and I really got into Axis and Allies. I remember playing games of that went on all day long. We had a friend who was notorious for taking upwards of 30 to 45 minutes for his turns, and so we would say, okay, you go ahead, we'll go in the other room, and with the rest of us would go in the other room and start watching a movie, and eventually say, okay, I'm ready to do combat, and we'd come back and managed to get through that and still enjoy the game somehow. But like many teenagers and young 20-somethings, I started to get into video gaming in the 90s, and that sort of took more of a forefront of my entertainment. And it wasn't until about 2010 that my brother actually reintroduced me to modern board gaming, and that was with a game called Merchants and Marauders, which I still am very fond of playing. It was the next year after that I went to my first BGG con, and the rest is history, so to speak. So that's how I got into gaming. That's sort of how I got reintroduced into gaming, and now it is definitely the thing that I.
Now, how did you get roped into FlingCon?
How did I get roped into FlingCon? Well, that's a good question. I met Joe through our friend Dario, who is also on staff, and the folks will definitely be seeing it at conventions. And I'm pretty sure I was at the very first so-called FlingCon, which was at Joe's house back in 2017. But I didn't come on staff until the second time that we were in New Braunfels there. What year was that, Joe? Was that in 20?
That was summer of 23, right?
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was summer of 23.
That was just last year. So it's like, if it was just that recent, it seems like
you've done what, 3 events with us?
Yeah, that sounds right. And my role on the team is primarily to handle the logistics associated with the vendors. So if you are interested in becoming a vendor, I'm going to be the person that you will have your primary points of contact with. It's definitely my desire to make sure that our vendors at FlameCon are well taken care of, and that they, as well as all of our attendees, get the most out of the convention. I also really love teaching people board games, as Wes, you already alluded to there. You know, if somebody wants to learn a game and I know how to play it, I am more than happy to jump in and teach people. I've been known to teach large groups of people games that I don't get to play myself, which is sometimes unfortunate, but I still love doing it. I even had the chance to teach you a couple of games, Wes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
in fact, you're the one who taught me the one we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, that's right. So,
and I will say this: Adam is very good at teaching board games as well. He not just loves it, but he's very good at it as well.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, I think, but I'll take the compliment. I do love it. It is something that, you know, I do practice because I've gotten bad feedback in the past, and so I learned from my mistake. So.
Absolutely.
Teaching board games is not an easy thing. It's not something that you know, is you can just pick up.
It's a thankless job too. You know, I know I've listened to Mark Bigme on the podcast So Very Wrong About Games, and he's very adamant that people thank their rules explainers because it's the kind of thing where, you know, if it's done well, then everybody has a good time and they don't really think about it. But if it's done poorly, everybody knows it, you know. So
and everybody
like
remembers
my years of being
too.
a DM.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, Adam, it's great to have you joining us tonight. One last question that I think, if I've got my wires, you know, connected correctly, I think is going to launch the rest of our talk here tonight. Tell me a little bit about your favorite games here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite, and I probably have several I'd love to talk about. But one thing that I know that we want to talk about tonight is the game Terraforming Mars, which is one of my favorite games. And I've got my copy here, which is the big box, which is the extra big box now.
Oh man, wait. There's a middle section I don't have.
There it is. There's a new middle section there. If you don't have that, so I'll just,
so does that fit everything?
It does fit everything, unless you have the play mats, which I don't. So
are they gonna release more things?
I don't know. You know, they said they weren't, and then they just released another one that I just received recently. The Prelude 2 Kickstarter came out with the also the Automa and then the extra maps. And so who knows? You know, maybe they'll release more. Terraforming Mars originally came out in 2016, I believe, designed by Jacob Frixelius and Frix Games, but it's published in the U.S. by Stronghold and now Indie Games as well, since they merged. But they've had, you know, as you all know, a number of add-ons to the game, mostly through crowdfunding. Most recently, you know, they had the big box, and then they expanded the big box even further with their most recent offerings, which were the Prelude 2 and the Automa and those extra maps. And so, you know, at this point now, you know, you have a lot of options when you're playing this game. I actually just broke it out again yesterday to play on one of the new maps, which I hadn't played on before, and it was just as fun as it always was. I mean, I remember when this game came out, you know, go to game nights, and there would always be a game of this, sometimes multiple games going at a time at several tables. And you know, since then it's certainly waned a little bit in popularity, but I think that at least, you know, in terms of the crowdfunding and how successful they've continued to be, it showed its longevity, and certainly is an evergreen title for Stronghold Games. So I love it. You know, we could talk about how it plays a little bit, but and what we like about it or what we don't like about it. That's fine too.
Well, first I want to just say how jealous you've made me. You have the once again. I thought I'd caught up with you, Adam. I got that big box at FlameCon in the bazaar. I was like, yay. And now you have it, something else that I don't have, but for Terraforming Mars again. And now I'm just like all green.
You got to keep up, Wes.
Yeah, you got to keep up, man.
I know. Keeping up with the Joneses. You know, in this case, the Modelos.
So, but before we get into the game so much, and before we get the details, are there Terraforming Mars tournaments out there?
I don't know. I know that World Series of Board Games has had Terraforming Mars tournaments in the past, and may still. I have never participated in one, but
Okay. Is there an interest, do you think? Do you think that might be something we could do at FlameCon, is run a Terraforming Mars tournament?
yeah, maybe we'd have to decide on exactly what we were going to do. You know, stick to base game or try to introduce some other things. I'd
Right.
certainly be willing to entertain that idea. I think, I think that we could, definitely have some fun with it if we had enough
Yeah.
copies out there.
I think we have enough staff on
But
that loves the game. So
right.
And now that
And a
we
lot of
have a
people don't.
person who's technically in charge of demos
Yeah.
and game teaching, we
Yep.
could
I
Welcome,
don't even
John.
know who I'm pointing at. I'm just pointing.
we can go ahead and throw that on him, be like, hey, some people might want to learn Terraforming Mars,
Mhm.
so and again, kind of for those of you who've not participated in the board gaming hobby for a long time, maybe who are checking this stream out, you're not quite sure what exactly we're talking about or why we're making such a big deal out of this. It's hard sometimes. You see a game, and I think John was talking about this last week, and I think it was a really good point where he was said, you come upon these games, and the only thing you've ever played is like Monopoly, or you've played Sorry or Clue, and you open this box and you see these pieces and these intricate boards and you're just like, you look at it and you go nope, and you just close the box back up and you push it to the side, and now you spend all this money on this game that was supposed to be so cool, and it's just like that's why having teachers is such an important thing, and that's why here in this stream we want to bring you thoughts on these games, how they play, different things like that, so that you can decide whether or not you want to invest not just your money, I mean that's one thing, but your time, your family's time, and seeking out somebody who can teach you to play these games. That's a pretty important thing if you really want to kind of break into this hobby, and that's one of the things. And again, Joe, yes, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it. That is probably the thing that that hooked me personally for FlingCon was the fact that I could go there. I didn't bring a single game. And those of you who watched our video last week, you're going to remember the story. I didn't bring a single game. I went the entire weekend. I went from game to game to game to game to game. I mean, I was never sitting around without a game, and I learned so many new games that weekend. I came home with a shopping list, and my wife just by yanked her
that's
hair.
great.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, what are you doing? So that's the purpose for this. So I hope as hopefully Adam and Joe and John and Dario bring their knowledge, because again, like I told you guys in the original stream that we had last week, I'm not the subject matter expert here. I'm just the talking head. These are the guys whose brains are full of all the knowledge and the wisdom and everything else. So I'm just going to try to draw it out and bring it to you. But come the event. That's really the key takeaway here. Is it's one thing to hear us talk about these games here on this stream. It's something completely different when you actually get to interact with Adam, or you get to sit down with Joe, or you get John to sit down and teach you a game. So, guys, I just can't stress enough. You got to make it to the next event. But there I go preaching again. Leave it.
Well, thank you, Wes.
Wes, we're gonna get you there, so you'll be that chest of knowledge.
I'm looking forward to it, man. From your mouth to God's ears. Let's go. Hey, Joe, I'm still waiting on that game of U-boat.
I'm ready. I love it.
So Adam, what is how would you choose to classify Terraforming Mars? Is it an area control game? Is it a resource game? Is it a combat game? What kind of game is it, and what kind of person is likely to be interested in it?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe it is it's an engine building game, primarily card driven. You're building a tableau of cards that will enable you to gather resources more rapidly and then proceed to reach the goals of the game, which, as the title implies, is to terraform the planet of Mars. And the way that you accomplish that goal is by getting the oxygen level to a sufficiently high state, getting water prevalent on the planet and getting the temperature high enough to make everything survivable. And so the way that it mostly works is as I said, through cards. And so you're going to have a hand of cards. You're going to be using these cards to either activate specific abilities that will be used over and over again from round to round. Cards that will give you one-time bonuses, or cards that will just further your economy. And so everybody's going to be playing as a specific corporation. There's a little bit of more than a little bit of sort of tongue-in-cheek humor to the game. If you read some of the cards, the flavor text on them really is sort of a neo corporate little bit of humor there, where everything is got a little bit of a shady agenda sometimes as you look at these corporations and what they're trying to do here. But and there's it really extends throughout. What's that?
Shock.
Yeah, exactly. So you play as this corporation that may have some unique abilities. You're going to do things like build cities on the planet. You're going to build forests. You're going to exploit the volcanoes and such to get the temperature to rise. You may even crash a comet or one of Mars's moons down on the planet to increase the temperature and perhaps knock out some of your opponents' infrastructure, and in the process, get these goals to where they need to be to trigger the end of the game. So that's the basics of it. There is a heavy element of building up your own capabilities and not interacting with other people, but there are quite a bit of competition that fuels that interaction that I think makes this a little bit more than a multiplayer solitaire game. A little bit of take that, as I mentioned, with knocking some stuff out from other people, but it's not egregious, I don't think, if you're opposed to that sort of head-to-head take that conflict type thing. Most of the competition is going to be in terms of racing to get those accomplishments done, of getting the oxygen and the temperature and the water out there before somebody else can do it, making sure that you're scoring the most terraforming points, and the person who has the most at the end of the game is going to win. Now that we have, of course, this gigantic box, they've packed a lot of stuff into this from what existed back in 2016. I'm not sure I can count how many expansions there have been, but have you played any of the expansions, Wes?
I have dabbled with them once or twice, but I really want to get into more of them. So in interest of full disclosure, I was at San Japan when I learned the game, and this is the guy here who taught it to me. Yeah, exactly. We're pointing somewhere.
I don't know where he is.
Adam came over, and a buddy of a mutual friend of ours named Richard said, it was talking to me about the game, and I said, yeah, I really want to learn to play that. He says, I think it's in the library, and Adam's here. He's a buddy of mine, and he could teach anybody any game. And so I'm like, okay, cool. You'll bring him over. So, yeah. And I'd met Adam through FlingCon at that point, but we hadn't really connected. And so Richard brought him over, and we sat down at the table. Oh man, I just fell in love with that game. I really did. It really was one of those that just hooked me right from the very beginning. So, but here's the important question, Adam.
Yeah.
With his 2026 mission coming up, have you sent a copy of this game to Elon Musk so that he can be prepared for his X launch?
Yeah, I haven't. I think he may be represented a little bit in what this box has to offer. There's obviously some references on there to some of the things that are going on there. Some of it's a little tongue in cheek, of course, but it's obviously everything in this game they've tried to make scientifically relevant. It's obviously a little bit of science fiction in there, but it's all speculative on real science and stuff like that. So maybe someday some of these things will come to pass. It's interesting though. They don't if you look at how the game is designed, each round, which it goes until everybody passes, is meant to represent an entire generation. and the game typically takes between 8 and 11 generations, kind of depending on how fast people are trying to get to the end and how many players you have. But if you think about it, I mean, 11 generations, that's over 200 years. And so, they're certainly not pulling any punches when it comes to trying to represent a realistic timeline that this would actually take. Now, I have a lot of great things to say about this game, but it's too bad Kelvin wasn't able to join us on this episode, because I do have one story, and it was at a FlameCon, I think in 2019, where
way back.
Yeah, actually, it may have been. Well, it was in the one. I think it was in the year that we had the AC problems. What year was that, Joe?
That was summer of 22.
22. Okay, so not as long ago as I thought.
We should bring that up every video.
Yes. Hey, we learned a lot of lessons that year, right?
We've come a long
For
way.
those of you who've never been to a FlameCon event, this was a defining moment. So just understand, you're going to hear about it.
But I had brought the game. I didn't have quite as many expansions as I do now. But Kelvin wanted to learn, and Roxy, his partner, and there was a couple other folks there. So we had a full complement of 5 players. And I had just received the Turmoil expansion at the time, which I believe was the 4th expansion, 3rd or 4th expansion, I can't remember. And we started this game at probably 6 p.m. with all the expansions. And let me just say that that was a poor choice on my part. It took a very long time. It was too much, especially for new people to learn it that way. So actually, that was one of the times that I actually sticks in my mind as a regret of game teaching. And I hope I didn't sour the rest of the players on the experience of Terraforming Mars, which I wouldn't blame them for if I had, because that was a long night. So it definitely has its drawbacks when it comes to trying to integrate everything, and especially if you have new players. So keep that in mind if you're diving into Terraforming Mars. And I think I learned that lesson when I taught you, Wes, because when Richard suggested playing that game, I remember asking. I said, "Is it just the base game? Because that's where we should start." And it was, and I think as you can attest, it was a good experience.
Oh,
You got to ease into it.
Yeah.
Joe, have you played this one before?
Have I played? Yes. Actually, Kelvin bought this game before FlameCon was even a thing, and we had played it at his house. I want to say, what year was the game released?
2016.
Yeah, it may have been 2016 was when I first played it with Kelvin, and he we sat down and we learned it and we played it, and I really liked it. And I will say it has a huge fan base, as you guys have already said. It's not something that I get to the table often. I do enjoy very crunchy, heavy games, and Terraforming Mars might be heavy for some people, but I don't know. It doesn't see my table too often. So
Not Axis and Allies.
It's not that I don't like it. I do like the game, but and I'm not trying to be negative here either. I do like the game, but it's just not really my cup of tea.
It's
a lot of
definitely
people,
a medium weight game.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
is. A lot of people compare it to Art Nova, because I guess mainly because of the tags. It has the tags kind of work the same way.
We're building a little bit, but
Yeah,
not the same.
I enjoy Art Nova way more than I do Terraforming Mars. The theme of Terraforming Mars is great, but I don't really see other than the tags, I don't see the relationship there between Art Nova and Terraforming Mars. But
Art Nova's
there
right
it is.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Art Nova is even better with the Aqua expansion there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, in many respects, I think there are more similarities than just the tags, although that is a very obvious comparison. And for me, Arc Nova actually hits the table a lot more these days as well. I think it sort of evolved a little bit out of the way that Terraforming Mars was designed. It adds some other things, and it certainly, Arc Nova borrows a lot from some different games as well with the way the action selection takes place, whereas Terraforming Mars has more opening. You can sort of do whatever you want on your turns based on what resources you have, whereas with Arc Nova you're a little bit more restricted if you want optimal action selection. But I think obviously Terraforming Mars is not without its own flaws. And I definitely think some of the expansions are a little bit of a miss for me. I have all of them, but I don't play with all of them ever, and I don't. There's a couple of them that I try to actively avoid, especially. You know, I would play them. I just it's pretty rare to find the opportunity to play with a group that is as familiar with the game as
Right.
I and as you guys are, and so again, bringing everything together like that is really not an option. And if I have to pick and choose which expansions I'm going to play with, there are certain ones that I would definitely leave out. Turmoil would be the most the biggest offender there, and then the Venus expansion also is. I don't think it's difficult to use. It just doesn't really add anything. So, but the Prelude, you know, Terraforming Mars has done a lot over the years to streamline the process. You know, they introduced the Prelude back in 2018 or 19, which jump started the game, the way the game starts, getting more resources for people, getting them maybe some short-term goals to kind of work toward. They've expanded that now with Prelude 2. And so a lot of people really think those expansions are pretty necessary to the enjoyment of the game. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I definitely think that that I appreciate playing with them. So adding in the other maps, I think, was a good idea on their part to increase the variety that you have with the game. You know, you got each map had different awards and milestones. Although with the newest expansion, with the Prelude 2, not only have they added a ton more corporations, a ton more Prelude cards, which are things that again you get started with at the beginning of the game, and then just a ton more cards in the deck, but they also added complete randomization of the awards and milestones, which are sort of in-game goals that you're trying to achieve. And that's something that they borrowed from the sister Terraforming Mars game, Ares Expedition, which had variable milestone and goals. So anyway, point being, I think that, you know, Terraforming Mars has, you know, almost a decade now of development that has made it the game that it is. Not everything that they've added, I think, is great, but what they have added that I use with regularity has made it a game that is very easy for me to want to get to the table. It may not always be my first choice, but it is certainly one that I'm never hesitant to play if given the opportunity. And I actually just played it again yesterday. So as I said, yeah, that's where I stand.
If you like Mars games, there's also one right above your right shoulder there, Adam. Which yeah,
that one,
yeah. That's my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So John,
yeah.
John, you've been unfortunately kind of quiet up there. So as we're kind of coming to a close here, trying to be respectful of my fellow con members and also the audience and the time frame. Can you kind of give us? You've played this before, I assume. So can you kind of give us your thoughts on the game? What is your opinion? And we'll allow you to kind of bring everything and wrap it up.
Okay, so Terraforming Mars, I mean, I obviously agree with everything Adam said. I think that if you're going to buy an expansion for it, the first expansion you should buy should be the Prelude. I do agree with him that it's not necessary to play with, but I think that it enhances the gameplay that much more. It gives everybody asymmetrical starting resources, money. It gives them an ability that's unique to that corporation. Well, not the Prelude cards, but the unique corporations do. And then the Preludes just kind of increase your different resources, and some of them give you an ability. I would also agree with him. The last expansion that I would bring into the mix would be Turmoil, because you start bringing in voting and different, you know, events and rules for the round, and your delegates have to be in certain spaces, and it really alters the game. The game is great, though. I would never play with every expansion. I mean, you know, that game is long enough as it is, and adding that many expansions is quite a feat to say in and of itself. And then going back to how we were making, like an Arc Nova and Terraforming Mars comparison earlier, I think the reason that everybody compares them is because you're playing out cards in a similar way. There are tags, just like in T-Mars and Arc Nova, you have different tags that you have to spot. But I do agree that the game is very different because in Arc Nova you have a very fixed amount of actions that you can take, and in Terraforming Mars you can build buildings, you can play cards, you can activate cards. There's just it just seems more open to me, or it feels more open. It may not actually be more open, but it just feels more open to me. But Arc Nova, the reason I think a lot of people prefer it over Terraforming Mars is because of the time commitment. It is much more accessible. You can sit down and I'll tell you, your first game of Arc Nova is not going to be a short game. But I play with a buddy of mine pretty frequently, and we can knock it out in about an hour, a little over an hour, and I always love looking at game boxes. They give you an average time commitment. And sometimes I look at those game boxes and I'm like, right. And other times I'm able to hit that time. So, and that's why I think that people, kind of lean more towards Arc Nova.
Arc Nova has a beautiful box. I will say that.
It does.
So Joe,
Very
I think,
appealing.
I think that's one we got to put on the list for that. Y'all will have to teach me. So I've never tried that one. So, well, guys, once again, I'm just so grateful that you guys came to spend some time with us this evening. I know that those who are watching are going to feel the same way. For those of you who have not yet done so, if you'll look down at the bottom, you will see a thumbs up icon. We ask you to push that. That helps the channel to grow. And also, if you want to be notified of these videos so you can make sure that you're catching all the new board game talk that we're going to be putting out, if you look to the right of that, you'll notice a subscribe button. You can turn the notifications on, and then when we put up new stuff, you'll know about it first. So thank you so much for being with us. We have enjoyed your time, and we will look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.